Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. A little later in the show, we'll be joined by Browns beat reporter Scott Petrak, and we begin talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. So, Mary Kay, Odell Beckham Jr. inactive for the Chiefs game. Is there any concern that this could be something that lingers on, or is it just a matter of, be safe and hopefully have him for the long haul?
You know what, David? I was actually quite surprised that he did not play in that game. I think it was all systems go. It looked like it was heading that way. He ramped up in practice the last couple of weeks, and it just seemed like he was going to play in that opener against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I was very, very surprised about that. I actually think the team pretty much expected him to play as well, or really thought that he would try to give it a go. But the player himself has got to feel good about it. And they gave him an opportunity to go out in pregame warmups and see how he felt about everything. And there was just something that said to him, I'm not ready yet. So it was at least in part his decision. I know that. And, it was just a matter of him feeling like he could produce at the level that he needs to especially go out and play against a Super Bowl contending team like that. In terms of whether or not it will linger, in my mind, if you didn't feel 100% ready to play last week, then maybe it's okay to pump the brakes a little bit and take your time and not rush into it and really feel good about it. Because that was a big game. You really wanted to win that one. There are some games coming up that they can probably win a little bit more easily without Odell Beckham Jr., the Texans, maybe the Bears, some other teams. So I wouldn't rush it now if I were him. I would get that knee exactly where you want it and make sure that you're ready for the home stretch and the playoffs.
Yeah, and the key is he's got to feel comfortable and he's got to feel like he can do everything that Odell Beckham Jr. is used to being able to do. So you certainly understand that. How concerned are you about Jedrick Wills? Initially, it looked like it was serious. Now we hear it's day-to-day, and it looks like he kind of escaped that serious injury type of bug.
Well, it's great that he escaped a very serious injury, because you do not want to lose your starting left tackle for any length of time. Now, if it's a high ankle sprain, he'll still be out for a little while. But once again, they're heading into a stretch of games where they can probably get by for a little while. Once again, you want Jed Wills 100% healthy for the home stretch and for the playoffs. So if he has to miss 2 or 3 games, they can do okay in there with Chris Hubbard. Again, we don't know yet. If it's a high ankle sprain, sometimes that can be 3 or 4 games, or maybe even a little more than that. We'll know more as time goes on, but I think that they can overcome this loss.
The other one is Grant Delpit. How close do you think he's getting to where he will be good to go? He was inactive, but again, that's not a surprise given that he's coming off the Achilles and he had the hamstring and just couldn't get on the field. Do you sense he's getting closer to being able to go and being active?
Yes, he's getting closer too, and he's another one that I thought would pretty much be available to play. But when you looked at the numbers, I think that they just felt that they needed guys in other areas, and if he wasn't going to be able to contribute a ton, that maybe they would have somebody else up active. Of course, that didn't work out very well when Ronnie Harrison got ejected 5 plays into the game. But I do think that he is getting much closer, and you will see Grant Delpit contributing maybe sometime over the next few weeks.
All right, so you mentioned Ronnie Harrison. Who do you think the Browns actually missed most? You had Harrison, as you mentioned, 5 games in, he gets ejected. Jedrick Wills goes down early. Odell Beckham Jr. inactive for the game. Who do you think, in the grand scheme of things, the Browns missed being out there and being able to contribute the most against the Chiefs?
That's a really great question. I think that there were enough offensive weapons in that football game for Baker Mayfield to hit the big plays to, that I'm not going to say Odell in this one. Because, look, he hit an enormous play to Anthony Schwartz. He got behind the defense and did a nice job there. He hit big plays to David Njoku, Jarvis Landry, and he was able to spread the ball around pretty well. So I think that they were able to absorb and overcome the loss of Odell for this game. And actually, I think Chris Hubbard played pretty well, too. He filled in nicely after Jed Wills left. I think the one that hurt the most in this game was Ronnie Harrison Jr. leaving after 5 plays, because it really sends your game plan into a bit of a frenzy, right? It did not enable them to be able to roll more safeties through. It just kind of eliminated the ability to do that very much. And you had to press into service MJ Stewart, a cornerback, to start for you at safety for the rest of the game. And that was tough. At one point in the game, John Johnson III was in the locker room in the second half getting IVs for being dehydrated. So who knows? Maybe he wasn't even 100% himself when the Tyreek Hill 75-yard touchdown happened. But I think that it caused the safeties, the starting safeties, to have to be out there a little more than they would have been. And that's the one that I would say in this game hurt the most.
And it was probably one that you really didn't expect, because if you expected you would need some safety help, you might have activated Grant Delpit. All right, Pro Football Focus top-ranked rookies from Week 1. Javon Holland, Dolphins free safety, was the top-ranked, 82.5 PFF grade. Anthony Schwartz from the Browns, the second-ranked rookie, 82.2. Mac Jones was third. Jamar Chase was fourth. And Mary Kay, it seemed from just the way I was viewing it, at home watching it, that they used Schwartz a lot of the same ways they wanted to use Odell. They used him to stretch the field vertically and horizontally, and they really Kevin Stefanski is going to find a way to use that speed to threaten defenses.
Yes, I had been saying that for a long time. I probably talked about it here on this show. I've talked about it on our podcast, and I've talked about it wherever else I get an opportunity to write or speak, and that is that they were going to be using Anthony Schwartz and that he was going to have a role on this football team early on. Why is that? Because you have to get that 4.26 speed on the field. There's no way that you're just going to waste that. He was a third-round pick. You play your third-round picks. I think a lot of people thought that he was sort of the forgotten man because he suffered a hamstring injury early on back in rookie camp, and we didn't see a lot of him. And people forgot about him while Donovan Peoples-Jones was the it receiver in camp. But people did seem to forget why they brought him onto this football team in the first place, and that is to go downfield, get behind the defense, and make those big plays. It was the element that was missing last year in the playoffs, the element of speed. Actually, they were hoping to have a double dose of the speed, which I wrote a column about that, saying that they were going to have double trouble with Odell and Anthony Schwartz, and I think they thought they were going to have that. I really do. I think that there was some surprise within the organization that Odell just didn't feel up to playing. So I would have to say that, yes, they used him in some of the same ways that they would have used Odell, but it'll be really nice when they could get both of them on the field together.
Yeah, and the other thing that you'll see is they're going to run those little wide receiver slip screens and those kind of things that are such a pain to defend. Now the Browns have a couple of guys when they get Odell and Schwartz on the field together that can threaten the defense that way. Let me ask you this. What's your biggest takeaway from Week 1 with watching the Chiefs and the Browns? When you look at that game, what do you come away saying?
Well, I'll tell you what, my overarching theme walking out of that game is we knew what we were looking at in training camp. We knew we were looking at an incredibly talented football team on both sides of the ball. And look what happened in that first half. It played out kind of like we thought it might in terms of them giving the Kansas City Chiefs a real run for their money. And I still think that the Cleveland Browns are the team we thought they were going to be this year. I still think that they're 100% on pace to win 12 games, maybe even more than that. And they just bumped up against Superman, Patrick Mahomes, and they started to make some mistakes in the second half. But this team is as talented as we thought it was going to be, and the future for this whole entire season still looks very, very bright.
I agree with you 100%, and the important thing to remember about this roster, fourth youngest in the NFL. It's only going to get better. This is Week 1. Give them some time to grow. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside. On the other side of the break, Michael Irvin on what the Browns need to do to beat the Chiefs. We'll also talk Baker Mayfield. How did he look in Week 1 against Kansas City? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. And back to too much caffeine. too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Michael Irvin from ESPN's First Take on the Browns beating the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm going to tell you this, and I can tell all the people in Cleveland right now, you will never beat the Kansas City Chiefs without Odell Beckham Jr. You will never beat him. And that told me it showed up yesterday. You're going to have the ability to make some explosive plays. Okay, and that's what happened. They running the ball, they're scoring. They kept them to 10 points in the first half, 10 points. But they scored 23 in the second half because sooner or later the dam broke. You kept Patrick Mahomes down, but then sooner or later you found Tyreek Hill on a big play. It's just too dynamic of an offense. You will never beat Kansas City without the dynamic play of an Odell Beckham Jr. or somebody like Odell Beckham Jr.
Michael Irvin and Mary Kay, I respectfully disagree with Michael. I get what he's saying. The reason they scored 23 points, there was the blown coverage. You know, that's going to happen with new guys. 3 turnovers, and one of them was, the punter dropped a snap on the 15. That's pretty hard to overcome against any offense, let alone one that has Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill.
Absolutely, 100%. And I also disagree with Michael Irvin that you have to have Odell to win this football game. Because if they do meet again, I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to count on the Browns making those 3 huge mistakes they made in the second half. The Nick Chubb fumble, the dropped punt, and the Baker Mayfield interception. They will have to play a more perfect game to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't think you have to have an Odell Beckham Jr. They probably will have an Odell Beckham Jr. next time around if they meet in the playoffs. But here are some things to remember. The next time they meet, Anthony Schwartz will be a lot more of a seasoned player than he was in his very first game. He's barely practiced. So for him to go out there and get as many snaps that he did and get the targets that he did, he's just going to be a better player down the road, and they will be able to utilize his speed even more than they did in this game. They didn't even use Donovan Peoples-Jones. He had 1 target for 4 yards. He's capable of explosive plays in his own right. So there were so many other things that you could have done to get things rolling in that second half that just didn't happen for one reason or another. I think they'll have Odell, but I don't think it's a deal breaker if you don't. I think it'll be a different game next time around for a number of reasons, some of which I just mentioned, but also, the Browns are going to have to probably contend with Tyrann Mathieu and Frank Clark in the next game too. So there will be a different dynamic going on all the way around, but I think that you can beat the Chiefs if you play a really clean football game.
Yeah, you can't give, Patrick Mahomes additional possessions, which is what turnovers do. That's why Kevin Stefanski and coaches hate it. You're giving the offense extra possessions when you turn the ball over. Let's shift our focus a little bit. What do you think of the way Baker Mayfield played?
I thought Baker had a really, really nice game for most of the game. There's no question that he played one of his better games in terms of being accurate, in terms of just operating the offense. I thought he took his game up to another level in a lot of ways. I mean, he was so good in play action and so many things that he did. Super, super accurate. But I do have to hold him to a little bit of a higher standard than maybe some people do at the end of the game. I can't give him a complete pass for not being able to go down and score a touchdown in that 2-minute drill, actually almost a 3-minute drill. He had 2 minutes and 49 seconds, one timeout left, down 4 points. You have to go down and win the game in that situation. We saw it with other quarterbacks over the weekend, and even beginning on Thursday night with Tom Brady, who of course is the GOAT. But that's what you have to do when you're the number 1 overall pick, when you are the franchise quarterback, when you're about to possibly become a $40 million man. When the game is on the line and you have 2 minutes and 49 seconds left to go down and win the game, you have to win the game. And if you don't love the plays that are called and it's not going to get you there, then you've got to figure it out at the line of scrimmage and change things the way that we saw Tom Brady. I watched Tom Brady basically look over at Bruce Arians and shake him off on certain plays. Like, no, we're not doing that. Now, Baker might not be quite there yet where he can completely change the play at the line of scrimmage, but I think he does have more authority this year, and he might have to take matters into his own hands at times. Whatever the case may be, that's his moment. That is his moment to put the team on his back and get it into the end zone. And that's what he needs to do. I think he's going to do it this season, and I think he'll do it a number of times. But that was a game where that's what his team needed from him. They did not need an interception in that moment.
Yeah, and you know what, though? He has a mastery of the offense that I don't think was quite there last year. He looked decisive. His mechanics were pretty on point. But to your point, the next step is you got to finish it, and when he finishes it, then the national folks will start to move him up to where we think he should be. Let me put it to you this way, and we've kind of alluded, we've been all around this early in the show here. Are you more confident, less confident, or equally as confident in what the Browns are in 2021 after watching that game against the Chiefs?
I think I am equally confident. I thought they were going to be a tremendous football team this season. I had them going 12-5. I have them winning the AFC North, although actually the Ravens looked better last night than I thought they were going to look with all the injuries that they have had. And the Steelers are actually better than I thought they were going to be because their defense really looks like it's all intact and back together. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But I still think the Browns will win the AFC North. I still think they can go 12-5. And I had them going all the way to the AFC Championship game. So my expectations have not changed. I think they're only going to get better. It was the first time this revamped and overhauled defense played together in a football team and in a football game. And the first time they had to do it out on the grass in a live game was against Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill. They will learn from this. They will get better. And I think it can be a completely different game next time around.
I agree wholeheartedly. You know, we didn't hear a lot about Greg Newsome, the first-round pick. To me, that says he played pretty well. Is that an accurate assessment? I know you said Newsome was going to be out there almost from the get-go. How do you think he played in Week 1?
I thought he played really well. I mean, he handled his business. He really kind of shut down his side of the field for the most part. I think he only gave up one reception is the way that Pro Football Focus had it. And he was, I think, the third-rated highest defender on the Cleveland Browns. The first one was Malik Mcdowell, right? I had been telling you guys that he should start. I wrote a column saying that Malik and JOK should start the football game, that they were ready to go. And Malik made me look smart on that first play when he shot into the backfield and dropped Clyde Edwards-Helaire for a 2-yard loss. So he did a fine job, and then so did Greg. So the young guys really represented very well for themselves, and I think it was a really excellent debut for Greg Newsome.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Browns, the only team with 2 offensive linemen who grade in the top 10 in the league. Also, areas of concern. We'll talk the offensive line, and then the flip side, areas of concern as we move forward. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So the Browns were the only team in the NFL with 2 offensive linemen graded out in the top 10 by Pro Football Focus. Joel Bitonio is number 1, 93.5. Jack Conklin, number 4. So they actually have 2 top 5s at 87.2. And Mary Kay, when you saw the way the Browns ran that football, it's not surprising that they graded 2 of those players in the top 10. There were times, one of those touchdown runs, Nick Chubb would have scored if it was touch football.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, they were as advertised. They did a phenomenal job. Good for them. Again, they were a lot better in the first half than they were in the second half. Chris Jones woke up a little bit in the second half. He said afterwards they made some halftime adjustments, and there was something very specific that they noticed that enabled him to be very, very aggressive on his rushes. And it'll be interesting to see if other teams pick up on that. But for the most part, the first half, they were just right on point. They gave up a few things in the second half that you wouldn't have wanted them to. But once again, they were without their starting left tackle, although Chris Hubbard did a nice job. But yes, this Browns offensive line, as we all know, is one of the best in the NFL. They're so good and they're so solid in both the run and the pass. And it just really is going to make the difference this year to have a good offensive line and a really good defensive line that you can dominate in the trenches on both sides of the ball. That's how this team is built, and it just helps everything.
So we've talked about Pro Football Focus, and they rank the Browns line pretty high and have. So Jedrick Wills gives us a little bit of a perspective on exactly what the Browns think about what Pro Football Focus does as far as their rankings. And Jedrick Wills having a little bit of fun as PFF grading offensive line play. It's the security guard kind of just patting everybody down. So, it's kind of a fun thing as far as not getting too carried away with it. Mary Kay, Jedrick Wills is a pretty funny guy. That's actually, I saw that and I kind of chuckled.
Yes, he is very funny. I would have to say that there's a lot of personality on this football team. It's that's one thing that I don't think we even talk about enough. Just in terms of media, and that is sort of the chemistry and the bond and the family feeling that is going on. I wrote a little bit about it on Sunday when I did a story on how the older dogs are teaching Greg Newsome some new tricks. There's just in every room, there's just sort of this feeling of they're having a good time. And that reminds me back of what it was like in the Bernie Kosar years and things like that. So it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, good football teams usually do have that feel, by and large, for the most part. All right, biggest areas of concern, and again, Browns played really well. They didn't get the win, but what are you concerned about moving forward as you look at the Browns?
Well, I would say the number one thing that concerns me is just having a little bit more discipline and control, just in terms of everything, a little bit of everything, in terms of mental errors and what Ronnie Harrison did, losing his cool. I mean, it just wasn't clean from start to finish in that regard. So I think that, it's just tightening everything up is what I would say. Now, the Nick Chubb fumble, I thought that was a really good hat-on-ball play by Juan Thornhill. That wasn't Nick just dropping the ball. That got punched out of there. And occasionally that's going to happen when you're playing a defense that went to the Super Bowl each of the last 2 years. So this is a good defense they're playing. Steve Spagnuolo, he noticed some things. Good defensive coordinator that he is. That's what I can attribute that to. But the Jamie Gillen thing, inexcusable. And then Baker, I thought the interception was, really a poor decision on his part. Now, debatable whether he was actually trying to sail that thing out of bounds and he just got his feet kind of in the grasp and couldn't get it there. Or did he see Harrison Bryant and decide that he was going to try to make a play? When I first saw it live, I thought he was trying to make the play and that it was just a poor decision in that moment. So, we'll see. But no matter how you slice it, those are the kinds of things that this football team can't do if it wants to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I did kind of think he was trying to throw it away and just got his foot knocked out, even watching it live. But again, he has to find a way. Kevin Stefanski said, got to find a way to get an incompletion there. Can't take the sack, so you can't do that. But in that instance, just get back up to the line of scrimmage and live to play another play with where you're at, trying to get that in and get that game in your favor.
Absolutely, 100%. But once again, I think Baker did so many good things in this game that, there's a lot to build on here. And I was really just so impressed with his command of the offense and the way that he spread the ball around. And again, I've been talking about this for a long time, and that is David Njoku. I've been saying that I felt that he was the most dangerous tight end on this offense, and I still feel that way. I think that he's not Travis Kelce yet, but I think he's a dangerous weapon. And I think he's a downfield threat, a red zone threat. And I think that you're going to see plenty more of David Njoku this season.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I too, I thought in watching Baker Mayfield, you look at him and I go, this is a franchise quarterback. Yeah, he is what the Browns want. He is the answer long term. And I don't think anybody who watched that game could argue with that. Mary Kay Cabot and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, CBS Sports, what we learned about the Browns from the opener, and plus we'll talk a little bit about Kevin Stefanski's play calling. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, Mary Kay Cabot. So CBSSports.com, one thing we learned about each and every team for the Browns, 2020 was not a fluke. So Mary Kay, what that tells you is they think that the Browns being legitimate AFC title contenders and Super Bowl contenders is real.
Yes, I think everybody could see that. Of course, this game was on national television. Everybody in the NFL saw it, and I think that anybody who watched that game will know that the Browns are for real and that they're going to give many, many teams a run for their money. I still think, like I said before, that 12 victories, maybe even 13 victories are within reach for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, they could have beat the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead on Sunday. They had them on the ropes. So I think that speaks very, very well for the Cleveland Browns, and I think that the Nationals are starting to come around on that.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. What did you think of Kevin Stefanski's play calling? Boy, in the first half, that offense looked like a machine, and then second half it got bogged down. But overall, what did you think of the play calling?
Well, I thought the play calling was very aggressive in the beginning. They went for two. They did a lot of really good things. They took shots downfield. Baker took really good advantage of those one-on-one matchups. He's never afraid to fit it into a tight window when a guy is covered one-on-one. So he does really well in that regard. But, you know, the second half, I mean, there were some areas of the second half where you had to wonder, should they not have been a little bit more aggressive? I think I would have used a little bit more Jarvis Landry in the second half. I think you need to rely on your big name players in the clutch when you're trying to close out a football game. Without Odell Beckham Jr., I think I would have relied a little bit more on Jarvis in the second half. There are times when they ran the ball trying to sort of, you know, keep the Chiefs off the field, but I don't know. I might have just kept gunning it a little bit more than that. Now, also, you don't want to start making mistakes and get into a turnover situation. You really want to utilize your running backs, but I don't know. There were certain points in the game where I thought maybe they could have kept the foot on the gas pedal just a little more in the second half.
What stood out to you about Joe Woods' defense? So the remade defense. Early in the game, they tackled pretty well. There was a couple spots, but when you look at it as a whole, what jumped out about the defensive side of the ball?
Well, there are a couple things. First of all, they look to me like they are becoming a much more aggressive and physical football team. The kind of, you know, get in your face and sort of beat you up defense that we're used to seeing from the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, right? I mean, an AFC North, really gritty defense. That's what it looked like to me. So that was one thing. As far as the defensive front is concerned, it just looks to me like you can keep rolling guys through there and keep these guys fresh so that by the time you get to the fourth quarter, you can have Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney converging on even the great Patrick Mahomes for a clutch sack that could have been the turning point in the game had they been able to close it out. So keeping guys fresh, rolling them through, and I think what they're going to do a better job of as they move forward is taking the ball away. It's a point of emphasis for this defense. Now, Petrak doesn't turn the ball over. In the month of September now, he has 35 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So it was going to be really hard to make them turn the ball over, although MJ Stewart dropped an interception. You cannot be doing that. But I would say that that's going to be coming down the pike very soon. They're going to start getting some hits on the quarterback, forcing fumbles, getting the ball out of there, getting picks, and that's where the defense will really make its mark.
Yeah, and to your point, I thought they pressured Mahomes pretty nicely, even though they only got the one sack. It wasn't like he had a lot of time most of the game. What do you expect in week 2 as they get ready for the Texans at home? I'm sure First Energy Stadium will be absolutely crazy, and the guys that are new here are going to love that. But what do you expect in week 2?
You know, I expect a dominant performance in week 2. I expect them to go out and really take it to the Texans. I think they're a much better team in every phase of the game, except where, you know, the Browns are still struggling a little bit on special teams here and there. But for the most part, I think offensively and defensively, I don't think the Texans really have much of a chance against this Cleveland Browns team. And I think it's one of those games where it could have a chance to get away from the Texans pretty early on. Now, of course, you've got Tyrod Taylor playing the game, and they won, and he played pretty well. But, the Jaguars are not the Cleveland Browns. This is a football team, the Cleveland Browns, that is going to go far this year. They're going to play really, really well. They're going to win a ton of games. And I just think they're going to overwhelm the Texans.
Yeah, I think Kevin Stefanski probably has everybody's attention as they get ready for the Texans based on what happened in Kansas City. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. As always, Mary Kay, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
My pleasure.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot. Remember, you can read her in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as on cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, will join us. We'll continue to talk Browns. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns, and Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, brownzone.com as well will join us in just a minute. Let's take a look at the defensive depth chart released by the Browns, the official, unofficial depth chart that the Browns put out earlier today. You see a new name at defensive tackle, Malik Mcdowell, who showed up and played pretty well. Also, Greg Newsome listed as the official starting cornerback opposite Denzel Ward. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram as well as brownzone.com. And Scott, certainly no surprise, Malik Mcdowell and Greg Newsome looked pretty good in their first action with the Browns.
Yeah, they did. I'll tell you what, Malik McDowell still surprises me. Just the fact that he hasn't played in 5 years. I thought he'd come off the bench, but he was out there the first snap. Played, I think, the most snaps of any defensive tackle in that opener and played well. Tackle for loss on the first play. I thought he was real active the entire game. And obviously the Browns trust him if they're even willing to put him on that unofficial depth chart as a starter.
Yeah, he moved the line of scrimmage back a little bit from that defensive tackle spot. Let's look at the offensive depth chart as well. Again, official, unofficial. Officially unofficial is how we'll term it. Odell Beckham Jr. still listed as a wide receiver, starting opposite of Jarvis Landry, and Jedrick Wills day-to-day, but still listed number one on the depth chart. Were you surprised that Odell did not play, and is it any reason for concern? Or you think it's just being a little bit overly cautious, extra game, want him there for as many as you can have them?
Yeah, I was surprised just because, and we've talked before, Dave, since minicamp in June, he's looked really good. Looked like he's ready to go. I saw him do some team drills at the end of, the preseason. He was going first in individual reps at practice last week. It just felt like he looked so good. But I think we forgot that it's still only, 10 months since the surgery for the ACL. He has to feel ready and comfortable to play enough snaps in the game and take some hits. And he obviously wasn't ready to give the role that the Browns needed out of him. So, I expect him to be back. If it's not Sunday, maybe the next Sunday. I think it'll be real soon. But I think I got so caught up in how good he looked that it's different from the practice field to the game field.
Yeah, and again, last thing in the world you want is a guy that plays a skill position to be tentative and thinking about anything other than what he needs to do. You want him around for the long haul. All right, Emmanuel Acho on if Baker Mayfield did enough to win that game in Week 1 against Chiefs. This is from Speak for Yourself on FS1.
Baker Mayfield managed the game marvelously. The problem is he only managed the game. He didn't win the game. What do I mean by that? He went out there and he completed all the short passes. Rollout game was on point. Yeah. Play action pass was on point. Running game was on point. Everything within manageable expectations was on point. But there were a couple times I needed Baker to go win the game. Yeah. There was a deep ball. Anthony Schwartz, a speedster from the SEC, if I'm not mistaken, ran track in the SEC, was a big-time speedster. Baker, I need you to hit him. I don't need you to manage the game. On that play right there, Baker, I need you to win the game. Then David Njoku later on, I believe it was the end of the half, 32 seconds left, you'll see the play. Yes, it ended up being a holding penalty. I think it's this one right here. But Baker, I need you to win the game. Don't manage it for me. You manage it perfectly, but I need you to go win the game. Those are the plays where you have to win the game. So I'm not going to put the loss on Baker. I don't think it's Baker's fault they lost. But I do think it's Baker's fault that they did not win because he did not do enough to go win the game.
And those, the Schwartz one, you hope that comes with a little more time, game speed. And Acho makes a point. Having said that, I think Baker played pretty well.
Yeah, I did too. I thought he played great in the first half. He finishes a 21 for 28 at 75%, which is a high completion percentage for a guy that maybe hasn't been as accurate as I thought he would be when he came out of school, but that ticked up in the right direction a year ago. I think Acho has a point when he talks about not going and winning the game, right? He had the ball in his hands on 2 drives in a row at the end and was unable to lead the Browns to a touchdown. At some point, at some level, that's on the quarterback. He ended the game with an interception. I know all the circumstances. He was grabbed as he was trying to throw it away. It's still an interception. I would have liked to see him throw it away a second earlier and live to play another play, and then it doesn't get caught up in the guy grabbing his foot. So, yeah, Baker did not go win the game, and he's going to have to do that this season in order for the Browns to get where we think they're going to go. But he has done it in the past. You go to that Cincinnati game a year ago. It was a great come-from-behind win, and Baker made every throw he needed to. That game really completed, 21 in a row before he had to spike one. So I think he can do it, but I also think that it's unfair to put too much of the Sunday's loss on Baker. There were plenty of other mistakes, the Nick Chubb fumble, the Gillen drop punt, James Johnson III letting Tyreek Hill get behind him. Those are all huge plays that put Baker in the spot that he wound up being in. And the last thing, that Schwartz play that they showed was not Baker's fault, in my opinion. I thought that was a bad route by Schwartz. I did think on the second last drive, Schwartz went up for it, it got knocked away, and I thought Baker he underthrew Schwartz just a little bit. And it wasn't a bad throw, but if he makes a perfect throw, then maybe they go down and score. But instead, it's knocked away and they have to punt.
Yeah. Bottom line is, I thought Baker Mayfield, you see why the Browns believe he's a franchise quarterback. I mean, he took a step. The offense, he was in command of the offense. He understood it. There was, he made the steps you wanted to see. Now he's got to take that to the elite level and go win the game. But there is progress towards that. Now this one, here's a tweet from CBS Sports, NFL on CBS. No one's thrown more fourth-quarter interceptions than Baker Mayfield, 16, since 2018. My response to that is Freddie Kitchens, Hugh Jackson, offensive mismatch. Let's look at what he's done since Kevin Stefanski's been around. Again, that's out there, so I felt it was important to kind of respond to it. I don't think it was a fair tweet by CBS Sports. Factually, it's correct, but look at what he was doing before Kevin Stefanski came.
Yeah, you need context for that tweet. And it's, he was a rookie. You said Hugh Jackson's a bad team that he was trying to carry. They're losing in a lot of fourth quarters. So that forces the quarterback to try to make plays. They could have been down. That doesn't say if you're down 2 or 3 scores, right? You're just throwing it around, trying to spark something. So there's not enough context. And I agree with you, Dave, that you really have to look at it from even the mid-season last year till now. And I think Baker's thrown, like 3 interceptions over the last 8, 9, 10 games.
And all interceptions are not created equal. I would contend, I believe he was trying to make the right play and throw that away. I thought that before he came out and said that. I think Tony Romo actually said, he was trying to throw it away, he got his foot. I think he was trying to make the right play. To your point, he might have held it a split second too long before deciding to throw it away. Throw it away, a beat earlier, and then you don't have to deal with that, and you're playing the next play. What's your biggest takeaway from Week 1? You watch the game, you see it, high expectations. What do you take away from what's got to be an opportunity missed by the Browns losing to the Chiefs?
Yeah, it certainly is. But, that's how I expected the game to play out. Not necessarily the Browns played so well in the first half, but they lose a close one. I had them losing 34-31. This is pretty much on the nose because the Chiefs are so good. Patrick Mahomes is so good. Kelsey, Hill, they're so good in Arrowhead. Andy Reid's a great play caller. So my biggest takeaway is that the Browns did not need to play perfect to win that game, right? I mentioned that big mistakes they made in the second half. If you take one of those away, the fumble, the drop punt, the 75-yard touchdown, or the Baker interception, they probably win the game. So therefore, you can still make 3 big mistakes and have your starting safety ejected and your left tackle go out with the ankle injury in the second quarter and still win the game or be right there to win the game. So to me, you can take some confidence from that. If you're the Browns, you can be encouraged by that. If you're a Browns fan, because I think they are closer to the Chiefs than they were in January.
Yeah, I would agree. The Browns are who we in the Cleveland media thinks they are, which is a team that's going to be right there in deciding who goes to the conference championship and potentially the Super Bowl. What about the biggest surprise for you Week 1?
I'm going to go – I could split it, but both things we talked about, Malik McDowell and Odell Beckham Jr. not playing. As the weekend went on, I thought more and more signs pointed to Odell not playing. If you go back and listen to how Jarvis Landry talked about him during the week, he kind of pumped the brakes on it, but I was still surprised. And then, I didn't think McDowell would have the kind of impact that he did right away.
The other thing I would say, and we've touched on it again, Odell Beckham Jr. shouldn't get out onto the football field until he feels he's 100% ready to do so. Don't minimize that he came back and is able to do the things. That's still an ACL injury. That's a serious injury for a guy that is going to take a lot of hits.
Sure, and there's a big difference between Week 1 and Week 2 and, Week 17 and the wild card or the AFC Championship game, right? I mean, if Odell needed to be out there, I think he would be. But, as important as that game was is how much anticipation there was. There's still 16 more of them, and then, hopefully, 3 or 4 in the playoffs.
Having said that, in watching the rookie Anthony Schwartz, it seemed to me like they're going to use him to do some of the things that they were, quite frankly, didn't have when Odell was off the field. He looks like a weapon that Kevin Stefanski has a big plan for.
Yeah, I think that's a little skewed with Odell not being out there. I felt like, and I don't know this, but I felt like Schwartz just stepped into whatever role Odell would have played. When you go 1 receiver and 3 tight ends, you want a speed threat, and that could have been Odell. And then the 3 receiver set, that could have been Odell, or at least maybe split the reps between the 2 of them. So when Odell's back, I don't think you'll see Schwartz play the number of snaps that he did, but he certainly showed that he can compete at this level. His speed definitely showed up, and Kevin Stefanski will find a role for him, whether that's 10 snaps a game or 20 snaps or 40 snaps. He'll be on the field enough to affect the game with his speed. And if you pair that with Odell's speed and dynamic playmaking ability, then you really have something with Jarvis Landry's, consistency and then the DPJ threat. I mean, there's a lot of pieces there. And we're talking about surprises. Schwartz was a surprise because I wasn't sure he would have the same impact, given he didn't practice a bunch in the preseason with that hamstring injury.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces that Kevin Stefanski can use in different ways without question on that offense. Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, a CBS Sports Power Ranking after Week 1, plus what rookies stood out. We'll talk that, more Browns. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine and too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also see his work on brownzone.com. So Pete Prisco from CBSSports.com, guy I respect, knows a lot about football, has the power rankings out, and I just don't agree with him. We'll say that and we'll go. He has Buccaneers 1, Chiefs 2, 49ers 3, Rams 4, Cardinals 5, Saints 6, Steelers 7, Seahawks 8, the Bills, who lost to the Steelers, 9, Packers 10, who scored 3 points against the Saints, Ravens 11, and the Browns checking in at 12. So the Browns 12th, and his comment was they need to learn to win the big game. Okay, I can't deny that, but losing to the Chiefs in Arrowhead when you had the lead and you couldn't finish seems to be pretty good to me. Scott, what do you make of the Browns being all the way down at 12? That seems awfully low.
Yeah, it's too low. And when I saw that, I wondered why it was so low. It didn't make sense until you saw his preseason rankings and he had the Browns lower than I would have had them. I probably have the Browns in the top 5 or 6. He had them below the Ravens. So that's not – so I think that plays into it. I think there's way too much emphasis on week 1 in those power rankings, right? You look at some of the teams, the Cardinals are 5th, and I know it was a good win in Tennessee, but to me they're not 5th. And I think of all the teams that lost, the Browns have the best loss. So we can argue if they should still be in the top 5, but they should definitely be in the top 10, and he's got them too low.
Yeah, and the Ravens they looked fine Monday night, but their running back thing is a challenge. They're going to ask Lamar Jackson to do way too much, and he's going to take a lot of hits in what they're doing. So it's again, we'll move on from that, but 12 is way too low. What about rookies that stood out to you as you watched the Browns? And there were a number of them. I was a little surprised that JOK wasn't more involved in what they did.
Yeah, that was interesting, because he got the first snap. They opened a nickel, and he was out there for the first snap. And it felt like he and Malcolm Smith kind of split that nickel role. Anthony Walker Jr. was out there the whole time. It's a tough assignment for a rookie, ask you to match up with Travis Kelce. I think the coaches just trusted the veteran Malcolm Smith to do it. And, Smith struggled, but everybody struggles in that role. I would think that the next time, if there's a next time the Browns play the Chiefs, JOK would be the guy when they go man on Kelsey in man-to-man situations. So, I thought JOK showed up a little bit, a couple of run stops, nothing really big in the pass game. But I thought Greg Newsome, the first-round pick out of Northwestern, I thought he played well. And, you watch the game live, and I was in the press box, and I couldn't tell because the Browns played a ton of zone. And you wonder, okay, I don't hear his name a lot. That's probably a good sign for a corner. But, Mahomes threw for a bunch of yards. Tyreek Hill caught a bunch of passes. Yeah, and went back and watched it. And really, Newsome just did not give up a lot of completions. And, a lot of that zone, a lot of it was Hill might have been on the other side and running away, crossing routes or whatever. But I thought Newsome played well. He made tackles when he needed to make tackles. And I didn't see anything that said, oh, my gosh, this guy didn't play well. And Denzel Ward said, yeah, he held down his side of the field.
The other thing that you saw a couple of times is they had Hill covered by Denzel Ward, and there were a couple where he's running stride for stride. Denzel Ward showed why a lot of people who know a lot about football think he is one of the better cover corners. He played well.
No, there's no doubt. And, you can't ask Denzel to play man on Tyreek Hill for 50 snaps. 50 snaps is way too many. Can you do 20? I don't know. That might be too many. But it felt like Joe Woods, when he asked him to do it, Denzel did a really nice job. And, he had a pass breakup down the field, kind of in the red zone, was a nice play. It was either the last drive or one of the last drives. He had a breakaway or break up on a slant. It was good coverage. He kind of got physical with Hill as he's coming out of his break. So, yeah, I think when Denzel is healthy, he's in that discussion as a top 5, top 10 corner. He'll get paid like it. And the Browns need him to play like that against teams like the Chiefs, against teams like, the Steelers, who have several good receivers.
So how concerned are you about special teams? McLaughlin, he made the extra points. There were some there where you're going, ooh, don't go that way. Yeah,
I think it's a concern. It's not as big a concern if you didn't love the offense like you love it and you didn't like the defense like you like it. You think you can probably get away without the special teams being a strength. That's not ideal, but you can probably live like that. We need to see more from McLaughlin. He passed the test in week 1, but we need to see more. Gillen, can't have that happen again. He'll get, obviously they'll keep him and he'll get another chance. But if that happened again, then you have to start wondering about your punting situation. And they just don't threaten anybody in the return game. And that's been kind of the case here for the last few years. I'm not sure they have someone on the roster who's going to change that. Maybe Anthony Schwartz. Mike Pfeiffer said he can handle kickoff returns, but you don't see a lot of kickoff returns with touchbacks. But biggest one shot a game, maybe he can have an impact in that role. And then, so if all those things being said, then you just need to really cover well. You can't give up any plays in the return game because then the tables start to shift, right? If you can just hold your own in special teams, I think the Browns will be okay, but you can't have a gap like Gillen did. And then you better cover well if you're not going to return it all.
All right, before I let you go, what do you expect Browns facing the Texans at home? First Energy Stadium figures to be crazy. What do you expect in week 2?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say bounce back because I thought the Browns played pretty well in week 1. But I think they'll play well again. I think they will be energized by the home crowd, full crowd, like you said. The Texans, I was stunned that they played as well as they did against the Jaguars. I don't think that's sustainable. Tyrod Taylor's not a bad quarterback. He's going to throw the ball underneath and he's going to avoid sacks. But if you get up on him early, then I think you can, you can take it to the Texans. So, the spread's like 12 and a half. I would say, the Browns are going to win by double digits and it'll be a nice, comfortable win, which you don't get a whole lot of those in the NFL. And I think the Browns should get one this week. Yeah, I would agree. I think that's the largest spread of the week, and it probably deserves to be. Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also read him on brownzone.com on the internet. Scott, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much. Thanks, Dave. All right, Scott Petrak. Remember, you can read him, brownzone.com on the internet. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you again right back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.